I'm Andrew Clark from Cannon Clarke Architects, and I'm really pleased to have Jon Brent with us in front of the camera. Jon is a co-director in the other half of Cannon Clarke. Jon and I have been working together for over a year now, and we've carried out some amazing projects to date. I thought it'd be a great opportunity to ask Jon a few questions and, more importantly, give our customers a good insight into the foundations of our practice. Jon, what inspired you to become an architect?
That's a tricky question, and it's a bit of post-rationalisation, I guess, because what I was thinking at 15 might not be what I thought at 15, if you know what I mean now. I guess I always loved architecture and buildings, but I suppose I love them as objects and how you made objects. And I suppose through my career I realised it's not about the building, it's not about what it's made out of, it's about what it does and how it relates to people or its function, and how people's lives are fundamentally affected by their environment. And I think in a kind of subliminal way, architecture, almost in an obvious way sometimes, architecture plays a big part. I suppose the other aspect was I always had a love of drawing, of being creative, practical problem solving. I was always sort of interested in making things, Lego or mechanical stuff, and sort of the art side of it and the creativity in the craft of making drawings that led on to sort of an interest in making physical built things.
Who have you worked for in the past, and what was your favourite project?
I initially started my career working in a firm of architects in Manchester called Stephenson Bell. I moved to London and worked for a firm called Patel for 5 years. Thereafter, I worked for about 13 years at a firm called AHMM Architects. Favourite project? I think in a way you take a bit out of all projects, but I guess the one that had the most satisfaction was being part of the Olympic Legacy programme, where we built an all-age academy as part of the Athletes' Village during the Olympic Games mode, that then became a fully functional school serving the pupils of Newham.
Do you have a favourite architect?
Well, I guess it varies day to day, doesn't it? It depends what your mood is. I'm very much inspired by the sort of the craft and the detailing of someone like Carlo Scarpa. I very much like the vision of John Lautner, the American architect. A lot of the sort of minimalist movement, some of the earlier modernist movement, Bauhaus, has always been a sort of influence on me. I'd say I like architects that sort of take a problem and strip it down and make it refined and simple, reducing things to its simplicity rather than ornament and decoration. And the Adolf Loos of this world is probably where I'm not at. So it's more of a stripped down and visually sort of simple diagram I like to enjoy.
What advice would you give for anyone thinking of becoming an architect?
I would say that the way it's presented in schools in terms of careers advice presents it as almost a kind of scientific, kind of technical profession, which it isn't. So, for instance, careers advisors will tell you, obviously do art, that's the creative side, but they'll tell you to focus on maths and physics, and it's not really about that. What I'd say to any aspiring architect is, if you're interested in how people live, where they work, how they get to work, the infrastructure around them, the offices they live in, if you're interested in creating environments and understanding people's needs, that's a good starting point.
So what do you love about your job, and what do you think it is that makes Cannon Clarke different?
What I love about my job is having the ability to create some fantastic projects in collaboration with my talented colleagues at Cannon Clarke. In terms of Cannon Clarke, and I think what makes us different is obviously there's a very good blend and balance of skill amongst our personnel. There's a huge technical resource and knowledge base that sits well alongside sort of more versed kind of contemporary architectural experience, as well as some young, aspiring, energetic, keen talent that we're bringing through the ranks at the present moment.
What's your ideal project to work on?
Oh. I suppose I've worked in my career on a lot of different building types. There's a few I'm glad I haven't worked on, potentially, but I think something, I don't know, some sort of assembly building, some sort of big public space. I've worked a lot on perhaps more commercially kind of led projects, office developments, housing developments. It'd be good to work on something more in the public domain.
So, John, what's been your biggest challenge to date?
I think every project has its challenges. Perhaps it's more about little bits of challenges than anything big in particular. And I think we are very much there to deliver an end product to make our clients' lives better, happier. And I think it's on a day-to-day. You can get bogged down in the minutiae of repetitive tasks of door schedules and specification writing, and it's sometimes focusing on the end goal and what it's all about. But I guess in terms of big challenges, getting planning permission for fairly prominent sites in London, in listed buildings, conservation areas. The microscope's very much on the design and trying to win over the public and the planning authorities to enable those projects to happen.
So what would be your advice for anyone thinking about carrying out a building project?
Well, my advice, and it might be an obvious one, is engage an architect. I think however big or small your project is, I think an architect with their experience, with their training, with the way they think about buildings and environment will add something. I think we have a number of clients that perhaps have come to us in the past that are very specific about what they want, but I think we try and analyse their brief and give them something more than what they initially thought they wanted, which is always a delight and surprise to them.
Get in touch with Cannon Clarke Architects.
Definitely, yes. No job too big, no job too small.